He's a nice guy.
Nice
As I
guy.
cry myself to sleep. He's a nice guy.
It's okay, he's a nice guy.
Why did he bully me?
Why do you make me cry? Stop making me cry, please.
Alright, I need to eat something.
Alright, so I got this baby all set up and good to go. I'll give you guys the link to my Twitch stream, just in case Thomas forgot to hit that button. And we can get going on here. So I put the link in general stream in case you want to join that channel, and we'll start talking about how to get a Roll20 going. Yep. Shiny, shiny pants. So basically, the last time we left off, we were talking about basic world creation. The main topic was whether you wanted to do the micro or macro design of your world. And the TLDR of that is, if you want to go micro, you start with a town and build your world outward. And if you want to go macro, you prep your world ahead of time before showing it to your players, and then they have like pretty much a well fleshed out sort of world to get into. I also went over the pros and cons of that. The video is still up on my Twitch channel in case people wanted to watch that, in case they missed it. But today we are going to be talking about making monster tokens and NPCs in Roll20. Now, a lot of people, especially me when I first started out using Roll20, we're concerned about stats and always having to refer back to the book in order to see like what its abilities are and what it can do and its attacks and how to implement that into Roll20. This monster manual template that I found on YouTube really helped me make my job a hell of a lot easier when it comes to combat encounters. It allows me to create tokens on the fly, use them repeatedly through my campaign, and not have to worry about even looking in the monster manual book after I created these tokens, because it has all the information that I need already set in the token itself. So I'll give you a little example. I created a archer token, and from the archer token, if you click on it in the top left corner, comes up this little menu that has actions, immunities, initiative, perception, saves, and stats of that creature. If I go into the chat log, I could click OK. It is the archer's turn. He is going to use his longbow attack. So I click longbow. The dice automatically roll to hit. The first hit is the one that you would use, and if the archer has advantage, that is the second value that you would use. Upon a successful hit, you click longbow, and then it rolls the damage for what the longbow does. So it says 3 piercing, and if you want to hover over it, it goes 1d8 plus 2, because proficiency in longbow for the archer. So that's basically a general token of how it works. Now, you also have immunities. You click on that, and a little menu will pop up with resistances that it might have, vulnerabilities it might have, immunities, and condition immunities. For those new people that don't exactly know what that is, resistance is basically the damage of that particular attack is halved. So say, for example, bludgeoning damage, it has a resistance to that. So any bludgeoning damage it takes from any creature or player will be divided by 2. So it takes half as much. Damage vulnerability is the reverse of that. If it, say, for example, its vulnerability is piercing, you would times piercing damage by 2. So if the enemy rolled an 8 damage on that archer, you would actually increase that to 16. That means it's very, very weak to that particular type of damage. Damage immunity is basically it takes no damage from that particular attack. So whether it's bludgeoning or piercing, if it's got a immunity to bludgeoning, you hit it with a club, it's just going to stand there looking at you like, was that it? Is that all you got? Like, it takes nothing from that. Condition immunities is a little unique. So, for example, you could have a creature that has immunity to, say, magical weapons. Just pulling that out of my hat. That means that any non-magical weapons that you use, anything that has just a plain longsword, will hurt it. But anything that is imbued with, say, a magical aura that does damage to the creature will not hurt it. So that's more or less basically what that means. As for the rest of this here, I'll just click on this little clock here. It's got turn order. So when you're initiating combat, you would have this little turn order menu up, and then you would click on the unit that you want to have the initiative roll. You click initiative, and it will automatically add its initiative to the turn order, which is really handy. The other thing that you can do is perception. So for perception, you just roll that, and it will tell you what its perception is. So 5, a 10, or a 10 and a 9. Saves. So if you're told, okay, this archer has to make a wisdom saving throw, you click this saves button, and it will roll every single saving throw that it needs: strength, dex, con, int, wiz, charisma. And then you just look for the particular save that you want, and then you just go from there. The last thing that I have on this is called stats. If you want to give your monsters unique stats like different health, you can just click that. And all it really does is tell you the stats of the creature. So armor class is 13. It has leather armor on for that. Its hit dice are 2d8 plus 2, so it rolled its health is 15. Its speed is 30 feet. And its senses, or what we call passive perception, is 11. After this is all being created, your token is done. I like to put sort of like little indications as to what its AC and its health is. So I put the health under the green circle, so the center one, and I put the AC under 13. So I look at the first number, and okay, someone makes an attack. It's an attack of 17. I'm like, okay, this guy's 13. He's weak, so he takes the damage. Then I go to the health, and I change it to whatever he gets hit by. Say, let's 2 damage. So you just go with that. And you can have multiples of these on the battlefield as well. So you just have a bunch of archers, and they could go all at the same time. Archers go. So if you have a lot of archers, what I normally do, and this was suggested by Thomas as well, is group them together. They are a group that go all at the same time. They do their attacks all at the same time. They do their moves all at the same time. That way you have less to worry about as you go through. And there's less clutter on the turn order screen when you have multiple groups of enemies just doing things. So that's basically what a token would look like. I'll show you what it takes to create a token. And you might think it's a little arduous, a little complicated, but it's actually quite simple. The video that I ended up using, which I will post in the chat actually right now, there's 2 parts to it. The first part tells you how to create this template that I've already made. So I'll post this in Thomas's chat as well as my own. And then the second part of this video tells you how to finally create a token based off of this template that you will be using, which is this link here. And if you guys want to follow along, the link in general chat to my Twitch channel, I'm streaming that right now to make it a little easier for you guys to understand what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go into the monster menu. Oh, I will post that link again here for you. I'll put it into chat because it might be a little easier that way for you guys.
Okay.
So that's a Thomas's. I put it into a Thomas's chat there.
I cannot see Thomas's chat.
Okay, I will put that in. If you go to general chat, you'll be able to see that. You click that little link that says Twitch TV /SmexyPants. You click that, you'll see my video. You'll see my stream. Yeah. Make it a little easier for you.
I was looking at Discord and I thought it was that chat, not this chat.
Oh no, yeah. I'm streaming on Twitch right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm watching this too. Had to mute it because it's a bit delayed.
Fair enough. Okay. So I have the monster manual template up here right now on my screen. So I'll just go over kind of how it's set up right now. So you have the name monster manual template. If you want to create a new creature, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to go edit and you're going to click the duplicate button here. That way you have your main copy and then you have the copy that you're going to edit. The reason I do that is because you don't want to change anything in the original template in case you screw something up on your copy and have to like go back and change stuff. So today I'm just going to make something simple. I'm going to make a goblin. So I'm going to give a name goblin here. I'm going to go over to my library here and I've saved a token of a goblin. So I'm going to drag and drop that into the avatar section of the goblin here. I'm going to save those changes. And then we're going to go to the character sheet. Now, this stuff here, if you have it in the monster manual, which you will have in Roll20 because they give you that information here. So if I click the information button on the top right corner here, you got your D&D 5th edition and it has a ton of like different races, proficiencies, and monsters. I'm going to be like, okay, I'm making a goblin. So I'm going to go into the online monster manual and I'm going to find goblin. So under monsters, I see that. And all I have to do is click and drag. And it will auto-populate the entire thing for me on the character sheet. I don't have to enter in a single thing. Makes it super easy for you. So after I've done that, I'm going to go to attributes and abilities. Now this is where the macros come in. Macros are basically a line of code that tells the program to do a specific thing. So for example, I have action here. And it says selected repeating underscore NPC action 0 blah blah blah. This is the first action that we are going to be giving the goblin. So if you go back to your character sheet, the first action that he has available is a scimitar. So we go over here, change the name by clicking this to scimitar, you save it, and that's it. Next action. Oh, sir, go ahead.
How do you do those little ability macros?
Oh, I'll get to that. So he's got like nimble escape. That's one of his abilities.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I go to the second action, and he's got a short bow attack. So I go to action, short bow. Okay. If there is a third action, you would just add it into this action here, and if there's a fourth action, you would add it here. It can be a little confusing at first, but the 0 is the first action of the creature. And then 1 is the second action, 2, 3, so on and so forth. Again, you will find these macros in the videos that I have linked in the chat. So it just makes it a little easier for you to follow along in case you get lost at all. You can refer back to my video, or you can even go to the videos I've linked, and this guy goes into greater detail what you can do with this. I've just kind of simplified it for myself. So since we have no other actions that we need of this creature, we can go ahead and delete the extra actions that we have in here because we don't need them. Next we go on to traits or abilities. So traits, this guy has nimble escape. So we're going to click on this and we're going to type in nimble escape, or shorten it to nimble esque, because it has a long, if you have like too much of a menu up top here, you can always abbreviate here to make it easier on yourself. And we go here, we have no more traits, so we go back and we get rid of the extra traits on here. Okay. Next we're going to go to reactions. This guy has no reactions, so we don't need this tab. And then the rest we are going to keep, because we're going to want initiative, saves, perception, immunities, and stats of this guy. So after that's done, save that. I'm going to go here, and now we have a goblin. So now I go and drag it. Test it out. As you can see, he doesn't have any stats up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on this little cog, and we're going to make sure that this character represents the goblin that we made, which it did. Its name is Goblin, which is good. These bars here, we leave alone completely. And we don't assign it to like HP or AC or anything. Because if you were to do that, and you had multiple goblins on the field, if any health of a goblin changed, all the other goblins' health will change as well, if you fiddle with this. So we leave this alone completely. But we do go to advance, and we go to bars here. Yeah, so I keep this as visible to editors. The reason I do that is because the players do not need to know the AC or the health of their enemies. They can insinuate, they can look and see if they're injured, but aside from that, they do not need to know that information. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'll go to the goblin stats here, and I'm going to check to see what it is. So their AC is 15, and their hit points are 7. So AC 15, hit points 7. The last thing that we do with this is we select the token, we click on the goblin, we go to edit, and we use selected token here. And save. And now I can delete this, and if we drag and drop the goblin onto the field, he's got his stats, and he's got all his actions and initiatives, etc. on here. So I'll give you an idea of what it looks like. So say, for example, we want to roll for initiative. So we click open this little timer here, this clock. We roll for initiative first. That automatically puts him on the initiative roll. And let's say we got another goblin. Or let's say we got the archer. Yeah, that's better, I think. And then we'll add the archer. Archer was added. Perfect. So now they are in order of when they're allowed to attack. But wait, this one's 14, this one's 19. We're going to need to fix that. Click the cog, and we're going to fix that into here. Now it's in order. So the highest number always goes first. So we're going to roll, and we're going to have the archer attack the goblin. So let's say he decides to get up and close. Within 5 feet, uses his action of longsword. 10 to hit. Unless he's rolling with advantage, you always take the first number. So you look at it, it's like, okay, 10 to hit. What's the AC of the goblin? AC of goblin's 15. Attack misses. We click this arrow. Goblin's turn to attack. Goblin, because he's close range, will use his scimitar. Click action scimitar. 14 to hit. What's the archer's AC? 13. That hits. So we're going to go back to the goblin. We're going to click scimitar to deal the damage. And that's 4 slashing. So now we go back to this guy. 9 minus 4, 5. And that's basically how a combat would go back and forth. Now, say, for example, we're down to 2 for this goblin. And he's like, I'm in big trouble. I'm going to want to use my trait. What was that thing again? Nimble escape. I can't remember off the top of my head what that was. I click on this. Or at least it's supposed to show up. That's a technical difficulty. But you're supposed to be able to click on this, and then in the corner here, to the GM, it'll tell its traits ability. So I will actually do this the hard way. And I will do it this way. So if I were to click on Nimble Escape, I don't know what it is for whatever reason. If you click on this while you have the Goblin sheet open, it works. But if you don't, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm going to have to look at that code. But more or less what's supposed to happen is this is supposed to pop up, and it's supposed to tell you the Goblin can take disengage or hide action as a bonus action on each of its turns. So after this Goblin, say, attacks for its turn, it can now use its bonus action to disengage. And disengage is basically it can leave the threatened square without invoking a attack of opportunity from the archer, which basically allows the archer to take one swing at the goblin before it's able to get away. And that's basically its ability. Basic archer does not have any abilities to use. So if the goblin manages to get out of range, the archer can either pursue, fire an arrow, or what have you. But that's basically the gist of how to create a token in the game. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you ever want to create a custom creature, this is where it gets a little arduous. You can always find, say, a compendium of custom creatures, and I'll show you what I got here. I've got several PDFs open right now based off of custom homebrewed animals that people have come up with. So, for example, we got an Arcanumite, which is what looks to be like a sort of like gem covered bug. It's got all its information here that you will need. It's got its AC, hit points, its speed, its basic stats, its skills, damage, vulnerabilities, senses, language, etc. It's got its traits here, 2 traits, magic, scent, and reflective carapace, and it's got its 2 actions, bite and leech magic. So if you wanted to, you could take this creature and then you could make a custom template based off of this creature, but you would have to enter it in manually. There's no real way of dragging and dropping this information. But what I would suggest is if you're a new DM and you're thinking, oh my god, I got to put the whole monster manual in this, don't do that. Only put in creatures you're going to be using in the next encounter. Don't overwhelm yourself with like putting in like 50 to 60 monsters when you're only going to be ending up using maybe 2 or 3 of them in the entire like 3 next sessions that you're doing. It's a complete waste of time. Use them as you come to them. There's also another way to organize it. I like to organize my monster manual that I created by alphabetical order, just so if I'm looking for a particular creature, I'm not going to know off the top of my head its CR or its combat rating. I'm going to know it by name. So I'm going to be like, okay, I want zombies. Do I have zombies? I don't have zombies in here. So then I make a zombie token and then put that under Z, so later I have it available for me. Let's see what else I got here. Yeah. So I've got, under S, I got Sanguine, Sanguine Elites, Sanguine Priestess, Sea Hags, Spider Skulls, which are super fun to use, by the way, and absolutely fucking terrifying. Telling you that right now. I used this on my group one time, and they probably virtually peed their pants. It's lovely to use. It's a terrifying thing. The way I used it is they ended up going into a cavern, and then they found like a mass grave of skeletons. But the weird thing about the skeletons is all the heads were missing. And then they heard skittering noises. And then I described to them that the outside of the cavern walls were moving. And they looked up, and all they saw was dozens and dozens of skulls with like protruding little skittering legs just coming all the way down the side of the cavern. And I was like, roll for initiative, and they're like, the fuck is going on? It was like one of the best things that I've ever done. But yeah, it's a custom creature that I typed in all the information for and created like this little sort of like token. And I decided that, hey, this would be cool to use in a campaign. I'm just going to make it, put it under S for Spider Skulls, and then use it in my next scenario. So there's plenty of things that you can find online, and I'll go through some of that stuff fairly soon here. But getting back to what I was saying, you could do it alphabetically, or if you're the type of person that wants to do it by CR rating, you can do that too. So it could be CR 1/2, CR 1/4, CR 1 to like 20. You can go as high as you want. So a CR, or combat rating, is how strong the creature is versus a party. So going back to this Arcanumite, on here it will show you challenge 1. So that means it's a CR 1 creature. 200 XP for a party of 5 that's even level 1 will squish these things so easily. You're going to want something that's a little bigger. So let's just scroll through here and look for something that's a little bigger. And by little, I mean gigantic. Something a little terrifying that we could use. We got like constructs. Here we go. A clockwork dragon. Perfect. So you look at this thing. It's got an AC of 18 and 184 hit points. This would be kind of like a boss monster you throw your players against. Not something that you want to put a level 1 party against because its CR rating is 14. This thing could like just smash them to pieces. It would not be hard for it. Plus, it's got legendary resistances. So, it can actually turn a failed saving throw into a success instead. It can use 3 of those per day. And if it wants to, it can blow itself up. And any creature within 30 feet has to make a dexterity save of 18 or take 6d6 fire damage and 6d6 piercing damage, or half as much on a successful one. So for those at home doing the math, that's 42 damage that a person could take from this thing just blowing up. And if you're a melee fighter and you're low level, you're going to be shredded to pieces. It's a lovely creature. Plus, it's got other stuff like multi-attacks. So during its 6-second turn, it can make 1 bite and 2 claw attacks. A bite does 17 damage, and a claw does 13 damage. So 26 plus 17 in 1 turn to a single or multiple foes. So again, very powerful. Know your CR ratings, know how strong your party is, and if you've thrown this at them and they get through it, they were either stupidly lucky or they are strong enough to take on something even bigger than a CR14. So that's always fun. A couple other creative things. We got a Coven Horror. That's terrifying looking. We got a Crowlock. Just a crow that can't fly but has multiple eyes. Not creepy at all. Crystal Elemental. We got a Crystalline Dragon. We got a Death Widow. Now, Death Widows, are these... What size are these? It's challenge rating 3. Large monstrosity. Okay. So, it would be taking up about a 10-foot square. So, if you don't know what that is, I'll just give you an idea. I'll pull up my map here again. So, this is a 5-foot square. So, that's 5 feet. This is 10 feet. This is 20 feet. At least I think it's 20 feet. Hold on. 5, 10, 15, 20. Yeah, that's 20 feet. So, to give you a little perspective, that is medium size to small to medium size. That's large size. And that's gargantuan. And they've got bigger and bigger and bigger creatures that you can use. But more or less, it's like if you're fighting something this big, and you're a tiny, tiny little gnome, odds are you're probably going to die if you don't have a little help. Or unless you're like super powerful. But yeah. That's a neat thing. Baneling. These things are kind of like a ripoff of the Zerg. But you can't use Zerg because that's copyrighted. So we just call them Banelings, or a demon. Herald of the Rot. This one I kind of wanted to use on my players. Pulsaloid. These things are necrotic and poison damage. They explode. It's beautiful. You got Pack Deaths. Dire Anglerfish. Dream Eater. That's not terrifying at all. I have a realm called the Nightmare Realm. These are going to be populating that area. Quite a bit. Because it just fits. Oh, and I also used Evil Dolls, by the way, in my Nightmare Realm. Yeah. They're cute. Fallen Angels.
Sleep at night.
Very well, actually. This is kind of going over the floral and the fauna of your world. So you can populate your world with things from the monster manual. I like to be unique because mine's a homebrew, and I want to use things that people have never seen before, just to make it unique. So I've put fern lizards in my jungles, my jungle areas, my jungle biomes, I should say. And the players had no idea what it was because they're not familiar with it whatsoever. But I kind of just made it like a neutral aligned. It's just like something there that's like a bottom feeder. It eats off of plants and like little bugs and stuff like that. But I described this thing to them and I showed them the picture. And they're just like, well, that's cool. Can you eat it? I'm like, I don't know. You could try. If you can catch it. It's pretty fast. So that kind of adds like a bit more flavor to your game. Fiote. These I would use probably in like a tundra or snow area or biome. frost giant Jarls, so basically a king frost giant. Fusion elementals, these are cool. This basically is like a gigantic tree that is like alive and can use various elemental magics. This is where this kind of thing I would probably put in sort of what I have like a god realm of elemental areas, so I'd probably use it in there. You also have like NPC races that you could use, like a gazillion or a gazillion. I don't really know how to pronounce it myself, but if a player was just like, I looked at your pantheon, or I looked at your races and the type of like animals that you use in here, and it says you have like sentient gazillion or gazillions. Can I be that? And I'd be like, sure. Let's roll up your character. Let's see what kind of class he would be, and let's place him in the world and see how he does. I'm not completely against people using unique creatures in my world. It's just right now, because I was a new DM, I'm not letting any new players do that because I'm still trying to learn the ropes and type of thing. But as my world grows, I would probably end up creating sort of like subspecies that you can go into that you don't see on D&D, and I'd let people play like maybe like a humanoid llama if they wanted to. Like, who knows? That'd be pretty cool, I think. And then we got the ghouls. We got Gilman. We got a ginormous squirrel. This is literally my favorite creature that I found in this compendium. I still have yet a way to introduce it, but I kind of got an idea how it's going to work. So we're going to see what happens.
I have a picture. I need to send you this picture.
But this is like ginormous squirrel. It's a gargantuan beast. So off the top of my head, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that's like the 20 by 20 square. I could be wrong, but yeah. It's ridiculous, the stuff that you can do with the game. What is this? Oh yeah, you swerve to avoid a squirrel. Unknown to you, the squirrel pledges a life debt to you and your darkest hour, the squirrel wives. In full plate armor. Yeah, I saw that before. That's hilarious.
That'd be good.
Yeah. So you're probably wondering where the hell I got all these like compendiums and like monster things. And might surprise you, I got it from Reddit. They have a huge D&D group there, and this Monster Day compendium is where I found it. So I'll give the link to that here in chat as well. So there's that there, and that there. So there we go. So I'm going to go out of this one, and I'll go into the next one that I have open here. This is Monster Hunter Bestiary. I've got 2 of these. This is the bigger of the 2. So this is another kind of like race that you can introduce to your characters. You could probably allow them to play as an actual PC if you wanted. It's up to you. But these guys are pretty well-rounded. Basically, they're just sentient cats. Regular size sentient cats. And they have like different types of cats as well, what their alignments are. So this the feline, I guess you could say. They're bipedal cats capable of human language. They have light fur and come in a variety of colors. They're a lot more agile and smarter than the average cat. Now, I've already put one of these in my campaign. It's a sentient cat bard named Mr. Whiskers, who is part of an assassin's guild. So yeah, it was pretty fun to play. And then you got the Millinks. They're the ones that have black fur, and they talk in human language as well as do human activities. They're quite intelligent, and able to build tools, trade, etc., etc. And then small humanoid creatures with green skin. They wear a mask over their heads at all times. So like these fellas here, the shakalaka. Yeah, shakalakas. You have another small humanoid. So kind of like pygmies, I guess you could say. Little pygmy monsters that you can populate in your jungles if you wanted to. Then we go on to herbivores. So we got medium beasts, so kind of like antelope and like a variation on caribou. You could populate your forest biomes with if you wanted to. You got the Ampsiros and the Ampanoths. I would probably put these in sort of more of like a desert area or jungle area. The Slagtooths, these would be in tundra biomes. The Popos, also tundra biomes. Actually, no, Slagtooths, they're more reptilian, so I would say they would be in jungle or maybe even like desert. This would be the same, like desert type biome. This could be underwater or swamp area even. Swamp biomes. These guys are basically like you could put these guys in pretty much anything. They could actually be used in farms and stuff. So they could be the area's form of their chickens. So they have like a herd of these things just kind of like running around in a field laying eggs, and they use those eggs for sustenance. The village sells them for they could probably sell them for mounts. They are large sized, so maybe you could see like, I don't know, like a little kid riding on the back of one of these as you're like going into town, that kind of thing. More lizards, so again like forest or jungle, or I'm sorry, not forest or jungle, jungle or desert biomes. Cross between a theropod and a bison, so that could be forest as well. This is close to a dinosaur too. A Mufa, moss swine. So like so many different like creatures that you can populate your skies with, even windrakes, Rimbora. Lots of predators as well, little predators, Velociprey or like little velociraptors. So I kind of like this where I'm going to take a lot of these creatures eventually. I'm going to populate my biomes with these particular creatures. So when characters go in here, I have like a small list I can refer to kind of like give more life to my area rather than just having them say, oh yeah, you see a mountain, you go to the mountain, you're on the mountain, you do the thing on the mountain, you're done, and you leave the mountain. I can actually like make it look like my world's a lot more alive than it actually is when I first started. So that's something I kind of work on. I'll go to the next book here, and this is what I use for my dwarves, or kind of like underground caverns that have been abandoned, old mining shafts that have left behind like constructs, or like even like little drones, construct drones that you could have like running around that have no master anymore, so they're kind of like self-autonomous. Or you could even have like go to like a dwarven city and you see these things kind of walking around doing like menial tasks like picking up trash, or like digging in stone and mining and using their drill arms to cut through all the rock and stuff. And you have like underground giant roaches that can kind of populate the less traveled areas of mine shafts to kind of give you guys like your characters some sort of like threat that they have to deal with if they're going in areas that are not really well populated. So that's cool. That's something I'm actually using in my campaign right now. And then the last compendium I like to show you is something ridiculous, but you can do: Pokemon fusions, or just Pokemon. Short to mid high level, lore friendly D&D 5th edition bestiary of Pokemon fusions. So a lot of people are familiar with the website. You go on there and you're like, what does a Aerodactyl and a Moltres look like? It's an Aerotrus. And people have actually gone ahead and decided to make stats, 5th edition stats for these creatures. So you got this thing, you got Arbtails, which is an Arbok and a Ninetales. That's not terrifying at all. You got a Biot, which I think is quite amusing and I might actually use in my campaign. It's like a Pidgeot and a Beedrill. We got a Charchamp, which is a Charizard and a Machamp. So you can imagine like walking into like a cave thinking you're going to fight a regular, just plain old, say, ancient red dragon, and then you run into this like steroid-induced nightmare of a thing with 4 fucking arms, and you're like, that's not what I was expecting. You can have a lot of fun with this stuff. Let's see what else we got. We got Kuzadzam, which is a Kubone and a Alakazam. We got a Kutails, which is equally terrifying. We got like a Gaschan. So you can imagine like a ghost coming up behind you, punching you in the back of the head and disappearing. You're like, the hell was that? That'd be fun. These things kind of terrify me a little. Kind of like a floaty ghost, but it's like a rock elemental that floats around. One of my favorites, though, I'll kind of scroll through this a bit more. That is terrifying. I don't think I'll ever use those. Ooh. Yeah. So in D&D, you're probably familiar with like oozes and stuff. And this is kind of unique. It's an ooze, a huge ooze, but it's magnetic. So what I kind of see, and this is just kind of like something that I would do as a DM, I would keep its static ability, but I would also give itself another ability. If you're within 10 feet, I would make you do sort of like a strength save if you're holding a weapon. And if you're holding the weapon and you fail, then that means that you are going to have that weapon attached to the ooze. Oh. And of course my phone's going off while I'm doing this. Oh, there we go. Okay. I'll answer back later. But yeah, that's something that I thought was pretty unique that you could throw in. It's not just a regular ooze, it's an ooze that can actually steal weapons away from the players, and they have to get up close and personal to get their weapons back if it's metal. I am gonna mute that. Oh, sorry. I actually have to take this. I'll be right back. Hello? Hey. Cornflakes. Sorry about that. My friend was dropping off some groceries for me, so I had to make sure that the door was open. But yeah, let's get this back up on here. I think it's working now. Yeah, okay. So yeah, I was just looking through those. But yeah, there's like a whole bunch of Pokemon fusion creatures that you can throw into your campaign if you wanted to. And just add them under your little monster manual using the monster manual template. I won't be needing that anymore. If you guys want any copies of these things, I can post them in general chat on the Discord. And you guys can find those on there. Let's see, what else here? Oh, so the last thing that I want to talk about is more like recommended YouTube channels and links that I would think new DMs would like, and just people in general who are like into the whole D&D thing. So the first link here, let's pull up. So this guy, he is one of the most popular DMs on YouTube. Basically what he offers is, if you need to know how to deal with murder hobos, how do I handle irrational things that players do, I can't do voices, how do I learn how to do that, this is the channel for you. he basically teaches you how to deal with very common problems every new and old DM deal with. He also helps you design your first campaign, what mistakes most DMs make and how to deal with it, and how you can make combat less boring. He has all of those answers. So his most popular videos are on here: dealing with murder hobos, are you a dice tosser, some previous things that we have brought up in this channel multiple times, especially at Thomas's, when should I cheat the die rolls, is something that is very good to look into. And 5 easy ways to make combat awesome. Instead of going back and forth all the time, it's just like a huge trudge. How do you like limit the amount of time it takes to do that? Because combat, ironically enough, a 5-minute fight can take 2 hours, 2.5 hours to do on stream, especially if you got more players. So how are you going to make that 2.5 hour fight more engaging, more fun for everybody involved? Because I've had players where if it's not their turn, they're on their phone, they're not paying attention to what's going on, and then when it gets to be their turn, they're just like, oh, I haven't thought of anything yet to do. So it's trying to keep those players engaged and saying, it's like, okay, I want you to have your actions and stuff prepped ahead of time, so when it is your turn, you just say, this is it, this is what I want to do, this is where I'm going, and then just keep it going. So yeah, that's one of the links that I highly recommend. I will leave that in chat here. So that and that. The next one I'd like to talk to you about is the Digital Dungeon Master. This guy is kind of hidden away. You don't really see him up front too often, but he offers a lot of experience in running the latest modules for D&D. He's done the Mad Mage, he's done the Waterdeep campaign, he's done the Mines of Pendelhaven, which I will never ever pronounce correctly, so don't ask me to. Just a whole plethora of just like various modules he has run, even outside of D&D. He has run... I think it was a Starfinder campaign, which is Pathfinder based. So he has done different modules as well. So if you're ever interested in seeing like what other things are out there, what other RPG modules you can run, he has done it as well. He's done a pirate campaign using the Savage Worlds modules. He's done miniature painting too. Just a whole bunch of stuff that you can look into if you're ever bored and want just something to just listen to while you're on the ride or something, home from work or whatever. So I'll leave you that. That's the link to his channel there. All right, next one, Matthew Koval. This man has been a saving grace for me. I'll tell you that right now. He touches on very important DM subject matters like PC deaths, splitting the party, how to play evil characters, creating your first town, and making even a pantheon for the world that you want to world build. He also has several videos of building a world from scratch. So I'll just kind of scroll through here. A couple videos he's got. I know it's around here somewhere because I did see it last I checked. He's just got so many things. Here we go. Yeah. So these things. Let's build a world together. Part 4, Part 2, building a world. Part 3, orcs, lizardmen, dwarves, and elves. How to generate a random map. The stuff that he uses. Building a D&D world. Like these videos here are what I highly recommend if you're trying to do homebrew stuff. He's taught me a lot of what I have been teaching you guys the last 2 videos that I've been doing here, so I'll leave you a link to that in here. So again, his name was Matthew Koval. He's on YouTube. All right, and now I'm going to get into like not so much DM related, but just fun things to watch that also kind of help your creativity as a DM, and just like things to entertain you while you're bored or just like depressed or, you know, whatever. Just looking for something fun to watch. The first one here is called Dingo Doodles. I discovered her when she posted just her very first D&D story video, and I gotta tell you, the animation has gotten so much better, her storytelling has gotten so much better, the campaign that her boyfriend has homebrewed for her is amazing. It is filled with so much just like stuff that I could have never thought of in my wildest dreams. It's amazing campaign that is being run, and it's just so funny to watch. Like, it's very comedic as well. So if you're like not such a serious person and actually just like want something funny to watch, I highly, highly recommend watching Dingo Doodles. She has like some other videos on just like her basic life experiences and what she's been through as just a person. But overall, her main shtick has been just like talking about the D&D campaign her boyfriend is running for her and all the shenanigans they get into. The next one, fun little link, Puffin Forest. This guy is really, really funny as well. He talks a lot about D&D stories that he has hosted, campaigns he has run, things that have happened in those campaigns, TPKs. The one time he did a mid-max character, absurd. I love this video so much. You have to watch it if you're looking for something just to kind of like laugh at. I think off the top of my head, I think it was like a jack of all trades character that he was playing. It's like a bard jack of all trades, and he just min-maxed the shit out of it, and it was just like super dumb, but it was hilarious.
Can't do anything.
Yeah, he's basically just like he does everything very badly. I think that's how the character was built. But that's Puffin Force. That's a link to his stuff. He also does DM tips. He also shows off some things that he has done. He's done Q&As with different channels as well. So he's done a one-off with Dingo Doodles. He's done discussion videos with Dingo Doodles as well as other D&D YouTubers. So they've done like collabs together that are really entertaining. So that's him. Now this one should go without saying. If you're a D&D player or even a DM, you had to have heard of A Crap Guide to D&D. Joe Cat is goddamn amazing. I cannot emphasize this enough. If you have not seen any of his guides that he has put in, you need to go watch it. Watch it right after my stream, of course, but watch it. It is so hilarious how he just comes up with these like little vignettes of the various classes, races, and generalization of what D&D is. And his humor is just top notch. Like, if you want to know what a monk does and you don't want to spend the next 30 minutes rifling through the PHB, you got a 2-minute video that basically tells you the basics of what a monk does and how you can use them in the game in a very comedic way. So
the power of Sword and Shield is unstoppable.
I posted some of his videos in chat as well. It's like, if you don't know what alignment is, watch this video because it's goddamn hilarious and it tells you exactly what you need to know. So yeah, I think I posted that. Oh no, I didn't post that. So yeah, so if you want to know about this guy, that's his link in the chat. And last but not least, I'll talk about Z Bashu. He also has a very unique animated style. This guy kind of talks more about the wide variety of spells and their uses in animated shorts. He also has a various informative D&D tip videos, also animated too. And he also talks about a campaign that he was running or he was in here as well. Not a lot of videos, but if you look at Animated Spellbook, he's got 38 sort of like short vignettes of like spells that he's gone over and their uses. So also pretty comedic and very informative. I highly recommend watching or subscribing to Z because if you're playing a spellcaster and you don't know what to do with it, don't know all the spells, this guy will show you the basic ropes. So that's the link for him in the description there. So
another one is, I think, XP to level 3 or something.
XP to level 3, I think I've heard of as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just fun videos.
Yeah, he's pretty fun to watch.
I like the Wizard trilogy.
I'm gonna have to look that up because I've heard of it, but I don't think I've ever actually subscribed to him. Oh no, I recognize this guy. Yeah, he's funny too. How to play Sorcerer, D&D hot takes. His D&D hot takes are pretty cool. It's basically commenting on like the lore and like the minutia and mechanics of the game, and people complaining about like DMs shouldn't fudge rolls, and he just gives his opinion on that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's pretty cool too.
What is your opinion on that? Because I've been in a few they've said, oh, don't hide your dice, or no, show your dice, and if it's something like that will actually hurt you, you can't blame anyone for it because that's just how the role works.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those if ones.
Yeah. Honestly, D&D preference. Like what Thomas said in his videos, he's actually touched on the subject numerous times, and what he said was he will fudge rolls. He said the one thing that you can't control is how the PCs roll, but the one thing you can definitely control is pretty much everything else. How the world reacts and the types of things that you can sort of like skew to your favor or to the player's favor. Give you a perfect example. I was in the Vampire Masquerade, the first episode. Something happened that felt like it could completely derail and destroy the campaign that we just started. And Thomas, being the kind of man that he is, being very, very good at improvisation, managed to find a way to fix it. A little. Just enough so in the next session, the players have less weight on their shoulders to deal with the problem that they accidentally started, and to move on to what the main problem they have is that is at hand, which is the main quest, essentially, or the main requirement of their characters, what they were planning on doing in the first place, before the shit literally hit the fan. So that said, my personal opinion is I don't like to fudge rolls, and the only reason I say that is because every encounter that I have put my players against, they have defeated, either very easily or by the skin of their teeth. And I provide them somehow with just enough challenge to not outright wipe the party, but still give them that feeling of mortality. They are not invincible. They are in dangerous places right now. They could be killed at any moment. They have to be aware, and they have to be ready for a fight at all times almost. They know where they are right now is a very hostile environment, and they could be killed at any moment. So I'm teaching them kind of like to be more cautious with their the way they handle themselves, and it is working. Like they never became murder hobos. They kind of understand that some of these can be deadly encounters, and they have to use their wits and tactics rather than just pure brute strength in order to get around certain things. I have managed to take out their one guy who was their muscle, and all the other people are like really strong spellcasters, but they're glass cannons. Like I could send like a giant monster after their party, and if their orc barbarian goes down, I just wait for the sense of panic in their voices, going like, shit, that thing killed our biggest blockade against like all the weak little spellcasters with like low AC and health. What do we do now? And they're just like, okay, fireball everything. So I find that I don't fudge rolls because I roll usually bad enough not to kill them, which is unfortunate because I've been trying for so long. But it still gives them a sense of like vulnerability. If I am rolling particularly bad, like I can't get a single hit with this one particular creature and they're just wailing on this thing, I might, in that case, introduce an exterior sort of obstacle for them. I might pull something out of my butt, because you got to keep on your toes with players. They're a crafty bunch. They'll get around your traps. They'll get around all the magical barriers that you put up that make sense to you, but not to them. So you got to kind of keep on your toes and keep them like at bay while trying not to like give away too much of the plot, which happens a lot, by the way. So TLDR, I don't have anything against fudging rolls. I myself don't really do it. just because my experience has been that it doesn't really affect my game either direction. It doesn't hurt or hinder. So I don't really use it because I don't find a use for it. Yeah. But it's a lot of fun. Just kind of like gauging the players' reactions to what you throw in front of them and kind of going from there. So as a DM, if you throw something in front of your players and they're just kind of like humming and hawing and they're just like, I don't really like this is kind of boring, then that might be the time to like pull your players aside, or even like one particular player if he's having issues, and say, hey, I noticed that you're not being too engaged right now. Is there something up? Is there something I might be able to do better? Like, I don't have anything against doing sort of like a I don't know what to really call it, just like a check on all the players, saying, how are you guys enjoying the campaign so far? Is there anything that you think you might want to see more of? Is there anything you might want to see less of? Because a lot of players won't tell you. They'll just show you with like visual cues. They'll be like bored or always on their phone or not very talkative when it comes to RP. So gauging your players that way and just kind of taking them aside and saying, hey, is there anything I can maybe like get your attention with? Like, are you finding this whole campaign boring? Is there something I can add to kind of spice things up a bit? Because I am the storyteller, and if my audience is bored out of their goddamn skulls, I'm doing something wrong. I know I am, and I want to fix it. I want to fix it right now. So a lot of DMs will probably do like a pulse check with the group just to see how things are going so far. We don't really do it that often. I don't recommend doing it every session, but maybe like every 3 or 4 sessions, just kind of check the pulse of your group and say, hey, you guys still alive out there? Like, you enjoying the campaign so far? Like, that kind of thing. So are you starting your own homebrew soon, or are you thinking about starting like a homebrew campaign?
Oh, I've already had that homebrew campaign for kind of a while.
Oh, okay.
Now, it's my first DM in kind of game, kind of
Okay.
campaign. When I started it, it was absolutely awful. It was absolutely awful. Like, I didn't know how to really start it, and then I like kind of like went kind of all around in circles. Like I think about 10 sessions. Like, I didn't know exactly what I've done, but now I've kind of got like a kind of group together, and I've now kind of put like various different plot points for them to go to. They're welcome to go to them or not, and they seem to be following the kind of the path as it's.
Okay.
So, well, not following a path, they're like the following. Oh, this is a plot point. Let's grab it. Or, I've also like started to realize like, oh, I don't actually need to like try and make serious moments or try and make laughable moments, because the players will end up doing for me. So I just end up doing things I particularly like enjoy, and the group tend to go that I'm with, they tend to like comedy a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to try and put in a bit of like elements of like comedy and probably serious moments as well.
Yeah, that's good. You might actually like the campaign I'm running. I have a YouTube channel, and the first campaign I did, unfortunately, a lot of the video has been lost or wrecked. Second campaign is more or less intact. I think I only missed like one video out of that entire series. And then the third campaign, every single video has been recorded, so you'll watch from start to finish. I've been running the campaign for almost 3 years now. I've had more or less the same group from start to finish. And I think at the end of this particular campaign that they're running, I might just end their whole story there. I haven't quite decided yet. Just because like I kind of want a break off from 5th edition and maybe try out some one-shots of like different modules and see what else I could run. But I fully intend on going to that group afterwards and saying, hey, I'm going to be taking a break from like 5th edition. However, I have taken a look at several different RPG systems. What is something that might interest you guys into going into? And we'll take like a vote, and then I'll start a new campaign under that new module and record that. So that's kind of like my thinking is what I'm going to be doing later on. But I still have this whole world that I can use in the future for a different campaign if I want to. Or I could run the exact same one that I did with these people because I have all my notes. I have all these videos for reference that I can use. So that would be something that I could do just to kind of like reuse a lot of the characters that I've already made up in the world and see the different reactions and different things that those players go through with those characters. But what I would highly recommend is if you're looking to make like a homebrew and you're not entirely sure what to start with, I would highly recommend watching the previous video that I did. And that touches on the subject of what I call the macro versus the micro design of homebrew campaigns or homebrew worlds. Either you do a top-down approach, which is basically you prep the world ahead of time before showing it to anybody. And then you throw your characters into that world that has like a more fleshed out sort of like design, a more fleshed out history kind of thing. Or you could do the micro approach, which is what I did. And I started with just this one shot in this world that I made up, had one town, and I had the beginning and middle and end planned out for that particular one shot. And I threw the players into it, and I was like, okay, we'll do this. Right now I just have it as a one shot, but I'm thinking about maybe expanding it into a full campaign, into a homebrew world. I just want to know what your opinion is on this after the one shot. And after that, the characters were like, let's do the whole campaign. Like, this seems like a really cool world to be in and to explore. So as I did that, I expanded the world outward. I just made town to town. I made location to location. And the characters were allowed to go to specific locations they had previously visited or new locations that I had created for them in each session. And from that, I grew a huge grouping of NPCs. Well, I shouldn't say huge grouping, but character NPCs that I have used, that the characters have either come up with themselves, were complete flukes, or that I just pulled out of my butt, and they basically became canon from that point. So I'll give you a couple examples. My campaigns that I run are quite humorous. So at the beginning of the second campaign, they had to stop a cult from sacrificing, which is essentially a virgin to their god, in an abandoned mausoleum. One of the characters, who was a warlock, had speak with the dead. And he decided that he wanted to get some information off of some undead individual. I think Oh, okay. I was checking my camera. But yeah, so what ended up happening is I had him do a roll, and off the top of my head, I can't particularly remember what particular roll it was. I think it was like Arcana or something, because he was looking for like a fresh grave to like use Speak with the Dead with. He ended up rolling a critical success on Speak with the Dead. So normally the way Speak with the Dead works is you can ask it three questions, and the corpse will answer to the best of its ability. And then after those three questions have been asked, the corpse just goes back to its resting place, just goes back to being dead. Because he rolled a nat 20, I decided to have a little fun. And I decided to give this particular corpse a personality. And the questions that were asked, the group asked these questions together, and if I can remember off the top of my head. Okay, so the first question was like, how did you die? And the guy replied, after coughing up some dust and some dirt, he's like, actually, no. The question was like, what happened to you? And the zombie kind of coughs up the dust, and he's like, I died! And they're just like, shit, we're going to have to be specific with the questions we ask this guy. It's like, one of the other players piped up, and they were like, what happened preceding your death? And he's just like, I was with my girlfriend. And they're just like, amazing. Like, this zombie has some interesting personality. So the guy who casts Speak with the Dead, he's like, great, now I only have like one question I can freaking ask this guy. And he's like berating the zombie. He's like, how are you able to speak so well? And the zombie just like retorts back. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. Did you want me to go, is that better? And he's like, dear God, this is just not going anywhere. So one of the other player NPC, or one of the PCs, pipes up and is like, what is the afterlife like? And he's just like, cold! And then he just goes back to the graveyard, just poof, dead. So then the character who did Speak with the Dead is all pissed off. He's like, smart ass zombie. So he does animate dead. And then from then on, he basically became like the unofficial sort of mascot of the group. Just like this zombie that was following around the warlock everywhere. And eventually the warlock ended up doing is just like cutting off the head of the body and just carrying the body or the head around in like a satchel. And ever so often he'd like pipe up when the group was like walking around. But yeah, that's one of the NPCs I just came up off the top of my head with, and he just became like canon from there on. And I keep like having him as like a little reoccurring character ever so often. But yeah. Oh, one sec. Hello? Hi. Last unit, Unit 25, right by the graveyard. Okay, thanks. I really appreciate that. Oh, that's okay. I'll grab them real quick. Alright, thanks again. Bye. Alright. So yeah, anyway. That was like one of the NPCs I kind of came up with. Another NPC I came up with was called Zasser Quibig. He's a wizard gnome that was traveling from the human kingdom of Adnal. I'll just pull up my map here real quick in case people are curious what the hell that is. So there's 4 human kingdoms. He was on a trip from Port Innsmouth, which is down here, all the way to Davenport, which is the Elvish port city, essentially. And as he was traveling, the PCs ran into this guy, and he basically told them he's an exotic pet. He owns an exotic pet emporium. And they were wondering, okay, what the heck is that? So what ended up happening eventually is they decided to visit his emporium. Oh, sorry. Another call. Hello?
There's an archive for this? God damn it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, like I have nothing thawed right now, so I'll cook it tonight. Yeah. Oh yeah, I get discounted meat all the time. Perfect. Okay, perfect. Should I just like e-transfer it to you, or okay? Okay, we'll do. I should have it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Text me. Okay. All right. Thanks. Bye. I'm so popular today. Anyway.
You're very popular.
So yeah, let's see. I was just gonna
I
show
did
off
not know
what
you
this
could
looked like.
archive pages.
Oh yes, my friend. Like every single thing that I have run from campaign 1, session 1, all the way to my current session, session or campaign 3, session 9. Like I named all of these to keep it in order, so easy reference, as well as if I ever want to like print off any of these notes, which I probably won't, but in case I do, I know all the maps and all the background pictures that I've used for my campaign. So very handy. So all I have to do is like, okay, I know it was in campaign 2. It was in the pet shop. Pet shop interior. So restore that. Boop. So the way I did the pet shop is like I had these all blacked out. So if I reset fog, okay. So they're all like fogged out. And I told them that as they entered, there was like various cages and such that they could look into and see. One of the pictures that isn't here anymore for whatever reason, bugged out or something. This is why I don't like Roll20, but I digress. Was a Hydralisk. So just for fun, I decided to put a Zerg Hydralisk in my campaign. And the Orc Barbarian, I told him, you notice that out of all the cages, there's one cage off to the side that has a very heavy looking tarp covering it. And you hear some growling coming from that, some guttural sort of like, and he's like, that's interesting. I'm going to peek under the tarp. So I said, okay, as you peek under the tarp, you immediately hear 3 just, and before you know it, there are 3 what looks to be sharp bone spikes that just kind of like fired right over your head into the wall on the opposite side and embedded a good like 4 to 5 inches into the wall, each spike. And Zasser Quibig turns around very quickly and he says, oh, don't bother him. He hasn't been fed yet. And the Orc Barbarian's just like, right. So not lifting up that tarp. It's just,
He was right to do so.
yeah. And one of the players lives out of character is like, did you put a Hydralisk in a cage? And I'm like, yes, I did. And he's like, and in character to Zasser, he's just like, how much for that one? And he points to the one in the tarp. And he's like, sorry, not for sale. Too dangerous. He's like, God damn it. He was just like, yes, I'm going to let you use a Hydralisk as a mount. That is something I allow in my game. Sure. Great idea.
That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah. And some of the other ones that I kind of liked. Zasser Quibig has a magma bear named Marshmallow. That's his mount.
Of course they do.
Yeah. And then I offered like other characters like sort of familiars like Fuzzbuzz, which is basically a cat bee. It's goddamn adorable, and I have the stats for it and everything. And you can eat its honey and heal yourself with it. And it is a form of sustenance as well. So it acts as a ration and healing. And you can do it like once per day because it develops its own honey.
Oh my gosh.
I asked my characters, okay, did you guys want any like familiars or are you looking for it? And one of my characters was like, I would love to have something called a Hawk Fox. I'm like, what is that? Sends me the compendium and I'm like, cool, I will allow that. So I decided to give him a Hawk Fox. That's what it looks like. And he bought it off of Zasser for a certain amount of gold. And he basically had this familiar with him the rest of the way. That's what he was hanging out with. So I allow my players to like feed into my world as well, which I really like as a homebrew. I find D&D 5th edition, if you're running a module, you can't get away with stuff like this typically, unless it's like not something that's like overwhelming. Like I'm sure like if someone was playing the Mad Mage module and they're just like, hey, could I get a homebrew sort of like familiar for my character? Depending on the DM, they probably say yay or nay. But because it's a homebrew, I can do whatever I want. So if a player wants to have a familiar then I will more than likely allow it, even if it's something that doesn't exist. I'll take a look at its stats, make sure it's not too OP. If it's something that I find that really accents the character, I will allow. So I'm pretty lenient on that sort of end there. So that's just kind of like some of the creatures that I've introduced to characters and said if they want to use it, they can. I've come up with my own factions of good, bad, and religious, which I will not touch on today because that'll be another workshop that I'm going to be doing. But
I need to add law to my gods in my world, jeez.
yeah. So what's something interesting that you would like to see in the next workshop video? Because I'm going to be doing these weekly on Wednesdays after Thomas's stream that he does, just to give it some sort of schedule so people can look forward to being like, okay, this is when the workshop is. I want to make sure that I don't miss it, kind of thing.
Okay. Well, I don't really know, like, because, like, most of, like, the stuff I'm just, like, with my world, I'm mostly winning it, but at the same time, like, I want to create, like, in this session, you went on the basis of monsters and looking at other compendiums, and,
Mm-hmm.
like, I like the idea of making, like, most of the time I'm just basically taking monsters from a compendium and then just reflavoring it to what I want it to be. So it fit the dynamic of the world I'm building.
Okay.
Like I've tried to like add, like I've only done one enemy who I basically homebrewed, and I basically made them the ray like a cultist ray caster, and they have so many different kind of elemental rays, and oh, this one shoots gleaming gold at you. It's like, why is it gold? I don't know. It just does it because I thought it was cool.
Yeah, like my advice is like if you're going to be using homebrew creatures, make sure it fits within the realm of your story and maybe flesh out the creature prior to your game, because then you'll avoid questions like that where it's just like to the players it has to make sense for what they're doing. If they're in a cave and then all of a sudden they see like a fox lady just kind of like show up out of nowhere wearing like leaves for her like clothing, you're just be like, that's completely out of place. What the fuck? So it just goes back to like, why does this thing shoot golden rays? What is the purpose of that? What are its powers exactly based off of? Is it an occult power? Is it an innate power? Can this thing just do it because of something? Maybe give some kind of rhyme or reason. But that said, if the PCs are fighting this creature in your campaign, you don't have to tell them jack. Because this is something they've never seen before. And you can even say that in the game. You're just like, you have never seen this creature before. You don't know its abilities. You have no clue. And that kind of sets the precedence where it kind of gives you a bit of leeway by letting you do those types of powers, because they don't know how its powers are working. They don't know where its powers come from. And it'll give you time to flesh out the enemy later in case you want to use it at another time. So that's kind of what I think. It's like, the less players know about the particular creature, the better.
Like, I've done like a few kind of. I removed that entire ability from it because it didn't make sense, and I just replaced it with like another one. But like the world I'm going for is kind of like a steampunky type of thing. So I'm putting like robotic, like
Constructs and stuff, yeah.
creations and
Okay.
constructs and stuff like in there, and then I'm also putting like cultists and stuff. And like one of the questions my players have always been asking is like, why is this dark creature resistant to radiant damage? And I said, well, you don't know. And I actually have a reason why it's resistant to it.
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't, like, because radiant is like one of like the rare types that not many creatures are radiant. So I've put in this like creature, these creatures, and they're like this entire fact. They're all kind of like dark, but also they're like there's different plots of the faction, and they all don't get along with each other, but the party don't know that.
Yeah. One thing actually just came to my mind. If you're using 5th edition rules and spells, color spray. That is a spell. That is a spell that does multiple colors, and that is something that this construct, or whatever this creature is, could be using. Or some variant of it, at least. Because that is a legit spell in D&D 5th edition. Or, if you decide to go down this rabbit hole, there are homebrew spells that exist and homebrew items that exist. So you can just kind of like look, and you can find an innumerable amount of information in regards to that even. Again, I don't really have anything off the top of my head that you can use as that, because I don't really use a lot of homebrew items unless I look it up myself or make them up on the spot. But again, Reddit, you look on there, they have a huge D&D group that you can use for information and resources. And like I said, that's where I got those monster compendiums from. Just go there and maybe like check out what they have for even spells that you can throw at your players. Are any of them familiar with D&D, or are they all fairly new?
So there's 2 people who are fairly new. So how I've run the kind of session, because they're fairly new and I'm a new DM, it's one of the sessions where it's very open to, because I'm a new DM and there's new people and there's also kind of a bit of experience. I have a bit more of an open kind of palm. Like I keep some of my secrets tightly close, but at the same time I open up. It's like, oh, this thing does this, and I'm trying to go for this kind of like element with it.
Mm-hmm.
So like they understand and where I'm going with it, and it's like, oh, okay, like it's a bit more open, and then they give me feedback at the end of the session to help me benefit.
Okay.
From kind of different. So it's like a learning kind of session. There's like 2 players who are new to the game, and then there's 2 people who have played the game a bit more experienced. One of them is helping a player. Funny enough, which I find ridiculously fun, the 2 new players decided to go with the 2 hardest classes, Druid and Cleric,
Of course.
when starting.
Well, yeah, like I wouldn't, as a DM, I wouldn't discourage that. But again, they're going to need a little helping hand. And I wouldn't necessarily say you should put it all on yourself, because you do have 2 seasoned players that could probably help you, or help these new players kind of like learn the ropes of what their characters can do. So they're not so overwhelmed at first. Because like if you got a brand new player and he's like, I want to be a wizard, you're like, ooh, how am I going to make this easy for you? Because there are so many spells that you do not know what the utility effects are, and like what the proper time is, and depending on how you do your spell casting stuff in your game, it also depends on like, am I going to force them to like go to town every single time, get the components specifically for those spells, and then prepare those spells ahead of time, and then they will have these spells available for that day? Or am I going to make it easy on myself and just so, you know what, I'm assuming you have all the components with you to do these spells. I'm going to assume that every time you go to town that you purchase these items with money. And then I'm going to assume that whatever spells that you have prepared are the spells that you are going to be using for the rest of the day. I put a lot of trust in my players, especially most of them are spellcasters, to know that. I'm very, very lenient when it comes to spellcasting. I will tell you that right now. I let my players, I assume that my players can use any spells that are available to them without a component cost, because I'm assuming that their character would already have this stuff on them, as well as I say, okay, you don't have to prepare spells. So you don't have to choose specific spells to use for the day ahead of time. I will say your entire spell book is open. The only thing that counts is the spell slots. If you use up those spell slots, they are gone, and then you will not get them back after a long rest. It makes it a hell of a lot easier for me as a new DM, because I don't have to track all the minutia of like, okay, did you bring the components with you? By the way, this spell's 5 500 gold to cast. Do you have that on you right now? That kind of thing. Because there are spells that do that. There is a spell that my player casts multiple times that requires a ruby that is worth, I think, 500 gold. Do I expect him to pay 500 gold every time to use the spell? Nah, I could be that DM, but I'm not. As long as you got the spell slot for it, I will let you use it.
Yeah, I'm very similar to that. Like, oh, you can use this, but like, I put a kind of like, I go with a rule list. A friend of mine uses to DM. Like, if you're using like resurrect or something that costs like, or reviving someone or something like that, that's going to use the components that like that it needs. Most of it is just money.
Yeah.
So which makes sense, but
Mm-hmm.
with the clerk, when they started playing out, I just said, you know what, you have everything available to um you have to use to keep track of your spell slots and stuff like that. Because they were new, they forgot most of the time to like lower it, so I had to keep an eye on the sheet and say, oh okay, I lower it. You don't have a spell slot here, and now they get into the hand of it of like removing their spell slots and saying, oh okay, I've used up all my spells, I have none left. And it's like, oh okay,
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Oh, that's good.
I
Yeah, it makes
actually
it easier
didn't
for you.
discourage. I didn't discourage any of them to like go with what class to play. I just said, okay, how do you wanna? Oh, so you wanna be a cleric? What kind of cleric do you wanna be? It's like I wanna be one that really heals people. Okay, life. There you go.
Yeah, life domain.
Sorted.
Yeah.
Druids like, oh, I want to be something that I can turn into creatures. Like, there you go, the moon, you're sorted. It's
Yeah.
like, and then I just whenever they had a question on a specific skill or ability, then I would help them out with
Mm-hmm.
it at the time. So combat for me was like really struggle because I didn't know how to balance it, but at the same time, try and like okay, it was slow. It was more slow paced than normal, because they were learning all these different kind of abilities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
And as
it
a new
went really
DM,
well.
you know, like you were a player once as well, and it takes a little while to get used to the system, but once you get used to it, it you catch on pretty quick. So patience is key. I agree with Papa Dave though too. Yeah, it will take some time, but they will understand the characters and sheets slowly. Exactly. You don't have to like throw them into the frying or what's the term again? Is like out of the frying pan into the fire. You don't have to do that
Yeah,
with them. You show them some restraint. You show them some patience, even some like leeway on some of the ways that they act with their character and they use their spells. I've happened to have like numerous times, just as me as a new player, where I'm like, okay, I cast a spell, and the DM is like, well, this is going to happen if you do that. And I was like, oh shoot, can I take that back? And he's like, the DM's like, yeah, no problem, man. Like, take your time, figure out some other strategy to do. And I'm like, cool. Uh, so I'm just like, okay, well, I'm not going to cast Fireball in an enclosed space. That's not a good idea. So let's see what else I can do. Boop, a doop, doop, doop. You know, just let your players, like, if especially if they're new, walk back some of the things that they want to do, or always remember to kind of like chime in a bit because you have the power to do that. You just like, are you sure though? That's what you do as a DM. You're just like, are you sure? Because it gives that player pause and goes like, maybe not. Maybe there's something that this DM doesn't want me to do just because like it could really mess things up for the whole party, and he wants me to really think about that. So it allows the players to kind of like have some second thoughts in case you're finding that they're having difficulty playing their character the way they should be. Um, One thing that I do want to touch on though, and it's been so annoying to deal with, and I just don't do it anymore, is alignments. Um, my personal,
I never use alignments.
yeah, exactly. Like,
If it's like, oh, how do you want your character to be like, and that's it.
mhm.
I don't like. There's a restriction on which I find mostly annoying when I started playing the game. Like that paladins were the only ones that seemed to have, and I felt like, what if you wanted to be an oathbreaker, but you can be good? You know, oathbreakers are nah, like you let them be whoever they want to be. Yeah, the one thing I put like as one of my like rules, like it's like one of the rules I made for the game is if stuff happens in game between two characters and they don't like each other, don't bring that anger outside to the player base, kind of thing.
Yeah,
And like,
people
oh yeah,
people take things very
happened in the
seriously.
game. Yes, some people can, but luckily the group I'm with, they tend to like, oh, it's in game and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
um, like I've had a few horror stories with like D&D games, and it just makes me want to. One of them just makes me want to really kind of cry because of what happened in that game.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has their horror stories when it comes to like running a campaign or even playing in one. Um, there are times where I wonder sometimes like if I'm gonna have like player conflict. But luckily for me, like my group that I have, they get along so well with each other. I don't have to worry about that at all. I got lucky. There can be some toxic people out there for sure. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
In at the start, I make a decision to kick a player from the game, my game,
Hmm.
because they apparently something to do with them being like a religious person or something like very religious.
Oh, like in real
Um,
life?
apparently in like real life, and
Okay.
someone wanted to play a warlock, and they apparently sent like a bunch of threats to them, and I just said no, get out.
Okay, I'll give you a little personal background for me. I'm Christian. I've been Christian for a long time now. This is a game. This is a game that is not evil in my opinion. This is a game of socialization. This allows people to forget about all the bullshit and all the crap that's going on outside this room and enjoy themselves and pretend to be something else and have fun with people that they like to hang out with on a daily basis. That's what this is. This isn't me starting a cult, okay? This is me
Yeah.
this is me teaching you a game of fantasy and us having fun with it. Again, it's like all depends on the DM style, but there are people that I know that are religious, that are Christian, that play D&D. It's become more popular. It's losing its stigma. Thank God for that.
Thank
Because
goodness.
yeah, because there are convicts that play D&D. Like they have this stuff in like jails because it like keeps the people out of trouble. It keeps their minds occupied and it keeps them from wanting to shiv the guy in the shower that they don't like, you know? Keeps you in line, keeps you sane. It has also been noted to help people with mental disabilities as well, such as autism. It gives them an outlet to deal with a lot of the stuff that's inside their head that they just can't get out like in a proper way. So they find this sort of like outlet to express themselves the way that they can and not be judged for it. Even people who are like have Down syndrome or people who have PTSD have found D&D to be very helpful and very therapeutic even in dealing with some of their things that they have dealt with in their life that are just too hard to like express inside them. So I believe that D&D is actually a very beneficial thing for everybody to try out at least once. It's not for everybody, but it would be something that I suggest people don't knock until they try it.
Mhm. And it's one of like the few things that like it's helped me. I used to be like, little mouse, but now I'm a bit kind of outspoken.
Yeah.
Like, um, when I had like, the first game I was in, like a lot of people like were engaged and stuff. And then when I like, I felt like I couldn't really speak, which is like one of the things because like it's a high impact kind of thing. And that eventually got me to like be a bit more outspoken. It's like if I wanted to say something, they went, "Oh, okay, just this person wants to say something in character." And it's like, "Oh, this," and it's like, "Oh, yeah, good, well done."
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then one of the DM like we're all nerds here. Come on, just be whatever you want to be." Which was like people say like, oh, like nerds or something, but it's like one of those things that like go, yeah. It's like how do you want to do how do you want to do this? I want to chop its head off. Well done. No, I will also want to use its head and beat it to death with its own head. It's like, oh, okay, that went a bit far, but okay, you went right into it.
Yeah. I took that from Matt Mercer, to be honest with you. I kind of stole that idea because I really like that little mechanic he adds in. Is like once a person finishes off a monster, it's just like, oh yeah, cut its head and now it's dead. Let the player explain what they do to it. I just be like, okay, how do you want to finish it off? And then they go into like this big grandiose like description of how like they just like chop off one arm after the other and just like boop him on the nose and then cut his head off. It's like some random stuff. So it's really fun to let the players have more interaction with your world when you allow them to describe how they completely eviscerate a goblin with their axe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I like when people is like, oh, I like to, I want to persuade the getting cheaper. Okay, how are you gonna do this? It's like, huh? It's like, yeah, how are you gonna make that goblin who owns the shop make that item that he's very proud of cheaper for you? It's like, I don't know. It's like, come on, just think of anything. Like, I I shine a little gold in front of his face and all this stuff.
Yeah. Like, what I like to do with NPC interactions now, especially when it comes to like rolling for persuasion and things like that, is I will tell them, okay, first thing I want you to do before you roll for anything is I want you to explain in detail or at least some form of description as to what you're doing and what you're saying. Then, based off of that, I will either give you a negative or a positive roll added to whatever you roll. So say, for example, someone makes a very, very compelling argument, and I believe that that NPC would accept that argument. I'd be like, all right, roll for advantage. Or they say like some stingy little thing trying to stop like two kids from fighting, and they're trying to like do something that the kids wouldn't appreciate. I'll be like, all right, roll for disadvantage for like the grapple check, because these kids are like on top of each other. You're trying to separate them, right? So that's kind of how I do it. Again, like it's a DM. It's up to DM what they want to do. But that's just kind of how I feel I'll do it. Also, one thing that I want to say, and this is something that took me some time to learn myself. Persuasion checks, especially through seduction, does not mean that NPC is going to jump in bed with the PC by just a roll. This is a world. This is a world inhabited by realistic individuals. That bard rolls a nat 20 to seduce the barmaid and taking her clothes off right in front of the party. She ain't gonna do it. She's just gonna be like, no.
Yeah.
She might think the bard's like super cute, but she ain't gonna do that.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Unless she's one of those people who is.
Yeah.
Or not.
Persuasion is not magic. If there's a paladin out there, and this is an example that I learned from another thing that happened to me actually, is if the person does not want to hear what you have to say, even a critical success in persuasion is not going to change their mind. So if there's a big bad guy and you're trying to seduce the big bad guy and you crit 20 on it, the big bad guy doesn't give a shit. He's going to kill you. That's what he's been doing, or at least trying to do the whole time.
Yeah, or like, oh, you get a nat 20 on it. It's like, oh, okay. There's a few seconds where he doesn't kill you.
Yeah. Or he'll be like, if you roll a nat 20 on a BBEG, I'd be like, all right. So he looks at you, looks at the rest of the party, and is like, I like you. I'll kill you last. And then he takes out his sword and starts swinging, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you managed to persuade him not to kill you yet.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just
Well,
like what
you
Papa
like-
said. Is like at most you're gonna get a
Yes.
date in the future. Like if you're trying to seduce a barmaid, you get a crit 20, and most you probably get a date in the future, but not now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to date a potential barmaid, you gotta put some work. Like, if you came to that same bar, like, for 2 weeks in game, then maybe she give you a shot. Maybe.
Yeah. Let me just check how long we've been going for. Oh, geez. Okay. So it's almost to the 2 hour mark. That's usually where I start to cut it. We got about like 17 minutes to go. So we kind of got a little off track, but I kind of like the conversation we're having. It's fun. But one thing I do want to ask you before we go is there anything that you want to see in particular, also the people in chat, that you would like to see me cover next? So far I've covered like the macro and micro build of your world. And today we talked about sort of like how to fill your world with NPCs and for flora and fauna to make it a little bit more lively and interactive. I do have a list of things on my little screen here. We got races we could talk about, how to develop those. We could talk about factions, or we could talk about maybe creating your first kingdom, what that entails, essentially. I got 1 vote for factions. I mean, I could do both because I got like 2 hours, so I could do like a kingdom building / talk about factions kind of thing.
Like, maybe, I'm thinking, like, kingdom factions.
Factions,
Words
yeah.
are hard. I'm thinking, like, yeah, kingdom of faction. I'm thinking also maybe, like, potentially, developing, if you're doing, like, a homebrew kind of setup, developing goods for those.
I
for
do
that
have a
world,
pantheon.
particular.
Yes.
Yeah. I've seen videos on it, but every time it feels like they get into the pantheon, they say, "Oh, dude, design this," and then all of a sudden it's lost. Somewhere in there, it's just lost me completely.
Oh, so they go into like extreme detail, is what you're saying.
Yeah, they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you got." It's like asking a teacher. It's like, "Oh, like, oh, how do you get like this question 2 plus 2?" It's like, "Oh, well, what you do is you get the answer is 4." It's like, "Oh, good," but then you gotta do this, and this. It's like, lost me. It's like,
Okay. So Pantheon is gonna need. I'll need a bit of prep on that, but again, I do this every week. So, okay, how about we do a vote? We'll do kingdoms and factions or Pantheon. We can do one or the other.
honestly, if I was gonna go with any, I'd like to hear factions first.
Factions? Okay. All right. So, next episode that I'm going to put together next week. Again, same time, same day, Wednesday, around 5:30 Eastern, usually after Thomas's D&D question Q&A that he does. We will be talking about how to create your first kingdom, as well as maybe dip our toe into factions and what kind of factions you guys can come up with to make your world a little bit more interesting. So, yeah. I'm looking forward to that because I got quite a few that I could show you guys already set up.
Yeah, I made a complicated faction in my group, in my game, but I don't know if they're good enough for the world.
I mean, yeah, come by next week and then we can talk about like your faction even during the question and answer period, and maybe I could help you out.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you for your time.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm going to have this recording on my channel on Twitch. I archive my videos, so in case anybody has missed the previous world building episode, I have that saved. So if you guys want to take a look at that, you still can. Most likely I'm going to be taking these videos and uploading them to my YouTube channel as well for further future reference in case people want to take a look. But aside from that, like